other CEO is male. And certainly among the top 10 insurance companies, I was the only female. So I never knew quite how to answer that question. Because I never thought of myself as a female CEO. In fact, even as an employee, I never thought of myself as a female employee. I was simply a female. Sorry, not a female. I was simply an employee. Okay? I was simply an employee, just like everybody else. I had a job to do. I had deliverables. I had things I had to achieve. So it never occurred to me that I should be thinking that maybe there are things I can't do because I'm female. That was not something that really I thought of, that I can't do this because I'm female. And maybe I was fortunate because I was raised by parents that made us believe that there was really nothing that we were not capable of doing just because of whatever limitation we might think of. Okay? They never put limits in our mind. And I think you'll find that many times the limits that you think exist actually don't. They're just in your mind. Okay? I never thought I couldn't be a CEO because I was female. My sister now heads the neonatal intensive care unit in the US. She's 4'11", and everybody reporting to her is at least a foot taller, or about close to a foot taller. She never thought that I wouldn't be able to manage this team because I'm so short. I have another sister who's a PhD in artificial intelligence. She works on highly advanced military applications, and she never thought that I wouldn't be able to succeed in this field because I'm not American. Okay? She's a Filipino. Similarly with my brother, my other sister, they hold US patents. There was never that mindset that I'm Filipino, I can't do this, or nobody will pay attention to me because I'm Filipino. No limits. Okay? Now, as you can imagine from my description, we were a family of nerds. We were all nerds. And for myself, I was much more comfortable in the library than in the playground. And having to socialize with people was painful for me. It really was something I dreaded. And I often got asked to join declamation contests for whatever reason. And standing in front of an audience terrified me. So much so that every time before I had to do it, my stomach would really kumukulo talaga. And I had to go to the bathroom before I would go out. It terrified me. And when I got my first job, I actually told my boss I never wanted to handle people. I just wanted to face a machine, because machines are easy, people are hard. So like that. So, sabi ko, I never wanted to manage people. But then you find out when you're working that you can't really work alone. Di ba? No man is an island, sabi nila. You can't really work alone. So I had to learn to work with other people, and eventually I had to learn to manage people. I had to adjust, I had to transform. And along the journey, I realized that when you leave your comfort zone, that's where the magic happens. As long as you stay inside your comfort zone, you will never really know what you're capable of. When you leave your comfort zone, that's where the magic happens. Now, when I was appointed CEO, that was another thing altogether. I didn't actually want the job. I turned it down, but my boss convinced me to take it. And so here I was, someone who never wanted to handle people at the beginning. Now I had to handle thousands of people. And one of the first things they asked me to do, they said, Riza, next week we have a press conference. I said, okay. So you're going to have to do this. I said, me? You want me to do a press conference? So I said, remember, I'm a nerd. I had that changed through the years, but I was still basically an introvert. And the thought of facing media, I said, you gotta be kidding. They said, Riza, so I said, do I really have to do it? They said, Riza, 25 to 30% of the image of a company is the CEO. You have to face the media. So I did. I prepared for it. And eventually I ended up doing TV interviews, magazine interviews, giving talks. Incidentally, my very first TV interview was David Celdran. And he did such a good job. I enjoyed talking with him so much that I agreed to do another one for somebody else. And I went to BBC in Singapore and Bloomberg. And as I did it, I learned not only to adjust, but to actually enjoy it. And a lot of the media became my friends. I realized then that actually, I can't do it. Now that attitude that I had of no limits, okay, try something, I took also to my personal life. So on the upper left, you'll see that's me bungee jumping in New Zealand on the year I turned 50. Now, you might say, siguro matapang. No, I'm duwag. I'm very unathletic and duwag at heart. But my kids are so adventurous, so they force me to do things I would otherwise not do. So me bungee jumping in New Zealand, the bottom, that's me taking samurai lessons a few years ago in Tokyo. That guy is a real-life ninja. He was the one who trained Steven Seagal and other Hollywood actors in the martial arts. And on the right, that's me on a glacier hike with my kids. It's a real one. The first thing we had to learn was to use those axes because they said, if you slip, ram it into the ice because if you fall into a crevasse, it might take us 2 days to find you. They said, oh, okay. So we're out on the ice the whole day. And in the middle was me running my first marathon. I had worked out my whole life, but the year I was turning 50, I felt I had already plateaued. And at that time, nag-umpisa na yung mga races. So I said, hey, why don't I join a race? So 5K, then mamaya 10K, and then became CEO. And I said, oh, the longer I ran, parang the more stressed I became, the longer I ran. So sabi ko, it must say something that eventually I decided to run a marathon. But to me, running a marathon was parang bucket list lang. I wanted to do it, be able to do it once, and then, okay na. So I was 51 years old when I ran my first marathon. And when I crossed the finish line, no, I had joined the clinic with other people. And when I crossed the finish line, the people running the clinic looked at me and said, did you do a full marathon? I said, yeah. And they said, wow. Then I thought, why? So I looked at the time, it was 4 hours, 46 minutes. And then I found out that in that entire clinic, nobody else had come in yet. And a lot of them were half my age. I was the oldest. So sabi ko, I didn't think anything of it because di ba yung mga Kenyan, 2 hours lang, they're finished already. So 4 hours, 46. But I was 51 years old. And when I saw the results, I said, wow, I'm number 1 in my age group. And then my son looked at it and goes, Mom, you're the only one in your age group. So you're also last in your age group. Siyempre, mga anak, ganyan. But you know, I realized, hey, I can do this. So the following year, I signed up for the New York Marathon. Okay? And then after that, I joined Chicago, and then some friends said, hey, you want to do Berlin? And then you want to do Chicago? So eventually, I ended up, so from left to right, that was Chicago, then New York, Berlin, then Paris. Paris is not a major, but I decided to do it anyway because it was fun. And then that's Boston. The toughest one of all because the weather was so bad. Bagyo, ulan, hard, strong wind, and 0-degree temperature. And so on top, those are the medals. From left to right, that's New York, Chicago, Berlin, Tokyo, London, and Boston. And in the middle is the 6-star medal. When I ran Boston, there were 3 of us that got our 6-star medals from the Philippines. We were the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So there are very few 6 stars from the Philippines. So I'm really proud of that, particularly because my kids always say I have no athletic ability. So I was able to do all the marathons. Now, what did I learn doing all those races? Okay. First of all, another lesson I learned from my dad, whatever you do it well and may always try to be better. Okay. So that's my dad, actually, in that picture. My dad is a chemical engineer, and he was so good at his craft that he was sent all over the world. He worked for a multinational, Colgate. He was head of manufacturing here. But every time they had problems starting up a plant in other countries in the world, they asked him to go. They said, go here, go there. So he'd been to South Africa, to Thailand, to South America, starting up plants. So naturally, when he retired, mandatory retirement, there were a lot of companies waiting for him to hire him as a consultant. So there's this company, Peerless, that hired him. And he worked for them. And when he was close to 80 years old, they said, we want to set up a new plant. And they asked him to do it. So he designed it, ordered, put it all together, started it up, got it operating. That plant now makes the largest selling detergent in the country, which as you can guess from the picture is Champion. Not only that, it was a model plant that had people from all over the world coming to observe it. Even people from Japan, which is known as a bastion of quality management, they were coming to observe it. He was close to 80 years old at the time he did that, and yet he built the most modern plant there was because he never stopped learning. And that's a lesson that he really passed on to us. Never stop learning, never stop trying to be better. But you know, you don't become better overnight, okay? You need to plan, you need to prepare, okay? You need to practice, and you need to push your boundaries. Every time I'd run a race, prepare for a marathon, okay? The first thing I would do was prepare a training plan. And the training plan specified that usually covered at least 16 weeks, coming from a baseline. It specified what I had to do every day of the week, how often I had to run, how long I had to run, how fast I had to run, what kind of run I had to do, whether it was interval training or long runs or whatever, as long as 32 kilometers, okay, for training. And then I would prepare. I'd get the right shoes, you know, I'd even research if I had pain, what was causing it, okay? What nutrition I should have, how much I should hydrate, and then I practice. The practice was critical. I tried never to miss a training day. So, which was difficult, right? Because I was running a company. So, once I was on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean on an incentive trip with all our salespeople, and I had to run 2 hours. So what was I to do? I ran on the deck of the ship, around and around and around for 2 hours. Paikot-ikot until I was able to finish. Another time, I flew into Boston for a conference. I arrived at 6 p.m. and I had to run 26 kilometers the next day. So I was up and 7 o'clock I was already running and I finished my 26 kilometers. Signal number 3 in the Philippines, I was in UP running until I finished my run, under pouring rain. So whatever the conditions, wherever I was in the world, whatever I had to face, I did my training. Because you really, that is critical. As you can see, discipline is important. And then push your boundaries. Every day or every week, I would run a little bit faster, a little bit farther. So, plan, prepare, practice, push your boundaries. You know, there was one day I was speaking with one of our sales advisors, very young, she had just joined the company. And I said, well, how are you? And she said, well, I'm okay. She said, I'm able to sell, but generally she'd sell small policies, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. And then I said, why don't you try selling larger policies? She said, nobody's going, I wouldn't have any credibility. She said, she's so young, hindi siya makabenta. So I said, okay. And then her unit manager, one day, when she came to her unit manager, she said, I have this prospect. The unit manager realized that prospect needed a larger policy. So he sat down with her and he helped her prepare, plan how they would approach, how they would prepare, etc. And then he said he would accompany her. He went with her and he didn't say anything. She did the sale entirely by herself. To make a long story short, she walked out with a check for a 10 million peso policy. And she said that's when she realized that that mindset of hers of not being able to sell because she was too young was really in her mind. She could sell 10 million. And once she broke that boundary in her mind, next time she sold 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. So push your boundaries because you never know what you'll be able to do once you do. As Sun Tzu said, every battle is won or lost before it's ever fought. Before I even run a race, I already know how well I'm going to do based on how well I trained for that race and what my mindset was. So remember, the preparation is critical. Before you go to make a sale, how well have you prepared? Okay? If you're a manager, before you face your people, before you talk to someone, how well have you prepared? The third thing I learned was take risks and don't be afraid of change. When I was appointed CEO in 2009, the situation was dire. We had just come out of the global financial crisis, and look at those numbers. GDP, the economy was very bad, 1.1% GDP growth. Life insurance penetration, nothing. Basically, the industry was flat. And in fact, people were asking, is the industry dying. Because over those 10 years, it had barely grown, and yet inflation was 5-6%. So, and it was no wonder why it was so bad. Because if you see, the financial literacy was so low that by the time people got old, they couldn't take care of themselves. If they ever got sick, what would happen? They'd have to borrow money, they'd have to try charity, they'd have to depend on relatives, or just not get any treatment. Financial literacy was so poor. Sunlife itself was not in a much better position. We had barely grown in the last 10 years, okay? Our net income was flat, and half of it was coming from reserve releases. Now, what are reserve releases? In insurance, every year you set aside additional funds from your net income because liabilities are long-term. So you don't know, by the time you need to pay it, the inflation rate might have been higher, expenses might have been higher, or the experience, mortality, people dying might have been worse. So we need to set aside reserves. But if the actual is not so bad, then we can release some of those reserves. But they actually told me, Riza, we're almost bone dry. There are no more reserves to release. Okay? And then we were underperforming the new companies, and of course you can say it's easy to get good growth when you start from zero, but it still wasn't good. And our sales force was not only not growing, even their productivity was declining. And we were unsuccessful in expanding outside Metro Manila. So against that backdrop, my boss talked to me and gave me a target for net income that nearly made me fall off my seat. He said, Riza, I said, but you want us to deliver almost 5 billion in net income. We've only had 1.5 billion core income for the last 3 years. I said, in 5 years now. I said, for Sunlife Asia to become a meaningful part of Sunlife, we have to be at least 15% of the net income. And because the Philippines was one of the more mature operations, we have to deliver a fairly significant part of that. So I said, boy, imagine I had just been appointed CEO and then I'm given a target na parang suicide. So I talked to our sales head because he was going to be very critical. We worked the numbers. We worked with the actuaries, finance, and we said, okay, how much sales do we need to generate? How many salespeople do we need to generate those sales? And then we worked backward. And it was really quite aggressive coming from where we were. So I sat down with the sales head and said, Alex, I said, are you in? This is what we have to do to be able to meet targets. So he said, what will happen if we don't commit to those targets? I said, well, we're never going to get the funding that we need to be able to grow, and we'll stay where we are. Basically, like a dead company, you're there, nothing's happening. He said, what's the worst that can happen? I said, I'll get fired. I told him, I'll get fired. Hopefully you get to keep your job. I told him. So he's quiet for a while, and then he said, Riza, let's do it. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, because if we don't, we're not going to get any funding and nothing's going to happen. So yeah, let's do it. So we did. We committed to the targets. We rolled out what our targets were going to be. They weren't really all fives, but we said we just made them all five so that we could call it Route 5. We needed to get to 5,000 advisors, which what we call the salespeople, 5 billion to generate 5 billion in sales, 5 billion in net income, 50 billion in assets under management was our mutual fund company, and we said, we can't forget them. But you know what? We realized that once you're very clear about what you want to accomplish, the behavior changes. Okay? Behavior changes, and there was a second element to this purpose. We started doing things that we had never tried before. In fact, that had never been done before. We launched a financial literacy campaign, which was the very first multimedia financial literacy campaign in the country, even ahead of the banks. We were on TV, we were running ads, we were with billboards, with mall tours. In fact, the platform for this was eventually used in Canada in our Canadian operation. And people were saying, what on earth is Sunlife doing? He said, does that CEO really know what she's doing? Everybody knows that in life insurance, advertising doesn't work. You have to spend your money on incentives for the salespeople. And then I remember a media person asking me, aren't you afraid that you're helping all your competitors? Because if you look at it, It was a financial literacy campaign, so we weren't advertising Sunlife. That's not even our colors, it's maroon. Our colors were blue and yellow. And you could hardly see any Sunlife in any of the material. But I said, you know, the pie is so small, the industry is so small. It's better to enlarge that pie than to be fighting over a small pie, over a share of that small pie. So we did. We launched this campaign, but even before we did that, we did our internal branding too, internal marketing campaign. Because Sunlife was a company that had been around for over 100 years, but people didn't really know what we stood for. And once people realized that our purpose is to protect the future of the Filipino, again, the behavior changed. It wasn't just about making a sale, but about protecting the future of the Filipino. After 3 months of running this campaign, we did a post-test. And what did the post-test show? Despite the fact that we were not selling or advertising Sunlife, their trust in Sunlife had grown significantly, I think from 30 to 70%. And then their intent to buy an insurance policy had grown, and the intent to buy from Sunlife had also grown. Because we realized, people said, hey, this company is actually trying to educate me. It was a literacy campaign, and they're trying to help me, they're not trying to sell to me. And so they grew, okay? The following year, we launched this late 2009. In 2010, we grew 30%, okay? From 2.2%, we were now at 30% the following year. We also changed our communication. Okay? Typically, in the past, it was the usual PowerPoints, and then one day the sales head comes to me and says, Rizal, we're about to roll out our next sales campaign. Okay, I want to try something different. I said, okay, what? I want to do a play. I said, what? A play? A play, yeah, okay. So, who are going to be the actors? He said, us. Us? I said, what do you mean, us? Us, the leadership team. You want us to act? Yeah, he said. So, anyway, everybody was game. We went all around, all the branches. We were like a traveling troupe. We had one professional actor to put everything together. We were in costume. Our theme that play was, I was the queen calling everyone to battle. And we had so much fun. We were mali-mali kami because we're not professionals. So despite the fact that there was Código in front of us, we kept saying the wrong lines, so we kept ad-libbing. So everybody was laughing, you know, even the audience was laughing. We were all having so much fun. And this was what we did that year that we grew 30%. And after that, every year, we had a theme already. Once it was Star Wars, another time it was adventure, another, that was me, I think, supposed to be Tomb Raider. And so you can see all the costumes, and people were having so much fun. Everyone was buying into it. Even in the people in operations, they were all creating their own gimmicks in line with the theme for that year. Okay? By the time we reached the 5th year, these were our original targets, 5 billion. This was where we came from in 2010. By 2015, we had surpassed all our targets. We had grown our sales, compounded, our CAGR was 42% a year for those 5 years. Because we were also able to buy another company, so we got the jump. We needed 17% from the agency, and then we were going to get bank assurance, and yung 500, bahala na kung saan kukunin. The agency actually met their target in 3 years. Everyone was just coming up with all sorts of ideas. We were trying new things all the time. And you find really that when you try something new, you accomplish things that you never thought would happen. In 2015, we also became Asian Life Insurance Company of the Year. It was the very first time that any Filipino company had even gotten into the finals. And I remember the interview, they had the final 3, it was in Singapore. I flew there, and I faced a panel of 20 insurance industry people from all over the world. They were asking questions. And then I found out the other 2 who were up against. One was MetLife Japan, the other was AIA Singapore. Each one of them is bigger than the entire Philippine life insurance industry. But we won. Okay, we were the Life Insurance Company of the Year, and until now, no other Filipino company has gotten that award, and Employer of the Year also. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are made for. If we had stayed where we were, never ventured out. Yeah, we might have been safe. No mistakes, di ba? No risk. Pero sabi nila, di ba, no guts, no glory. So we tried with different things. When you venture out beyond the harbor, then you reach new worlds and new horizons that you never even thought existed. Another lesson, I guess, that I remembered growing up was about values. Do any of you recognize what this is? Does anyone know what it is? Betamax. I heard somebody say Betamax. It must be somebody with white hair. Okay? So, it's a Betamax. Okay? The precursor of the VHS, tapos naging DVD player, di ba? Ngayon, wala na. Streaming na lang. Netflix na tayo. So, when we were younger, we weren't really well off, no? We were 5 kids. My dad was working. We weren't actually that well off. So, it was, money was tight. We were comfortable, but money was tight. And my dad was the plant manager at the time. So purchasing was under him. So the suppliers kept trying to send him gifts, Christmas gifts sa bahay. And he kept returning every single one of them. Then one Christmas, a Betamax came. Uso yun. My classmates had Betamaxes. In our case, not only did we not have a Betamax, we didn't even have a TV until I was 9 years old. And it was a small screen like that, black and white. So, as usual, my dad said, okay, return it. And I was like, Dad, Betamax. Dad. Parang gusto ko nang hilain yung Betamax. Pero, of course, he returned it. But those lessons were ingrained in us. You realize, as you go through life, integrity can't be bought. It's non-negotiable. And those lessons, those values that we got about integrity, about excellence, about doing your best, things that we never forgot, and they anchored how we behaved the rest of our life, how we behaved in our careers. Okay? Remember your values. They are your anchor. They are your North Star that will guide you. Oftentimes we find that in our drive to succeed, in the competition, you're tempted to cut corners. So for salespeople, we'd always ask, do you make sure that your clients are fully informed? Is your disclosure complete? Do you make sure they know what they're buying? Okay? Do you make sure that they can actually afford what they're buying? Or are we trying to sell them something that's not suited to them? So it's very important because trust comes from the accumulation of all your actions and interactions with other people. And I'm sure you find that when you do a good job with a client, they refer you to other clients. So whenever you're tempted, remember, and I've always found this throughout my career, when you do the right thing, okay, then you do things right. You get the right results. Finally, have fun. Okay? Have fun. On top, that's actually our members of our executive team. That's our CFO, our Chief Technology Officer, our General Counsel, and our Chief Investment Officer as KISS. Okay, do you remember KISS? That's KISS. This was the very first celebration we had when we became #1 for the first time. Oh, by the way, I said that we are 30% growth the first year. By 2011, we were already the #1 company in the industry. And by the following year, 2012, our premium income was already 50% more than the second running company. To this day, Sunlife remains #1. So have fun. So this was our celebration concert. And the bottom, this was again the leadership team during one of our Christmas parties. We were supposed to be singers, the famous singers. And I'm sure you recognize Michael Jackson, 5th from the right, plus 50 pounds. That's our sales head. That's me with the purple hair. I was supposed to be Katy Perry. Okay, maybe not so recognizable, but I was Katy Perry. Okay? So we had fun. And, this was our various kickoffs and parties. So this was me ziplining down, okay? From 2.5 stories up, that was my entrance. As a CEO in one of our kickoffs, I ziplined down. And just yesterday, one of our advisors posted and tagged me. She said she will never forget her first kickoff in Sunlife because she was a rookie. And then when they announced that the CEO was going to speak, She was waiting for me to walk on stage, and then all of a sudden I come flying in a superhero costume, and she thought, I'm in the right company. And she said, and it's been so much fun ever since. So me as Amidala, as a general, that was the Katy Perry party where I was just lip syncing. I can't sing. So have fun. Because you find that, sorry. As Dale Carnegie said, people rarely succeed unless they have fun in what they are doing. And we found this to be true. The entire time of Sunlife, people were having so much fun that even people visiting us said, as soon as you enter the building, it's a different atmosphere. It's so bright. And even the security guard is smiling. Even the janitors are smiling. People were working late into the night, on weekends, overtime, but they were happy. And recently, one of our employees sadly passed away, and I went to the wake. And I spoke with her daughter, and the daughter said, I'm so happy to meet you. She said, my mom loved her job. Every day she couldn't wait to get to work because she loved what she was doing. And she said, I hope one day I can also find a job like that and a company like that where she can't wait to get to work. So remember, have fun. So remember, no limits, okay? A lot of the limits you think are there aren't really there. They might exist only in your mind. No limits. Whatever you do it well and keep trying to be better. Plan, prepare, practice, push your boundaries, okay? And then number 3, said, what was number 3? Plan, prepare, push your boundaries, and then they said, bigla ko na senior moment. Now I'm showing my age. Anyway, it's there. And then anchor yourself on your values, okay? And lastly, have fun. Oh yeah, I forgot. Number 3, how could I forget that? Don't be afraid of change. Take risks, don't be afraid of change. Number 4, anchor yourself on your values. They are your North Star and will guide you whatever challenge you come up with. And lastly, have fun. You'll be far better when you enjoy what to do. Thank you very much.